Have you ever been called difficult? Not because you were aggressive or unreasonable, but because you had the courage to ask questions, to speak truth, to not go along just to get along? This label, difficult, often hides a deeper fear. Society's fear of the person who cannot be controlled. It's not your tone, it's your autonomy. It's not your attitude, it's your refusal to be manipulated. Think about how many times women, in particular, are told to be nice, smile more, or don't be so sensitive. These aren't compliments. They're subtle forms of correction, designed to shrink a person who dares to take up space. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he also understood the cost. Becoming authentic means shedding the roles others want you to play. It means walking away from comfort, applause, and approval. And this is where things get painful. The moment you stop performing, when you stop pretending to be who they want, you will lose people. You'll feel lonely. You'll be misunderstood. People won't know how to place you anymore because you've stepped outside the script. But what if that was the first sign you were finally free? Your pain, your confusion, even your isolation, they're not proof something is wrong with you. They're proof that you are waking up, that you are no longer willing to trade truth for belonging. Many of us have grown up thinking that being accepted is the ultimate goal. But Jung's work suggests something deeper. Individuation, the process of becoming whole, is the real path. And wholeness often comes with a rupture. It's the tearing away of masks, the dissolving of illusions, the painful shedding of false selves. You stop nodding when you disagree. You stop smiling when you're hurting. You stop apologizing for your needs. And suddenly you're labeled the difficult one. But let me tell you something important. The world doesn't need more agreeable people. It needs more whole people. People who have dared to confront the dark and the light within them. People who have learned to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. Because those are the ones who heal others, not by fixing them, but by standing as living permission slips to be real. So, if you're in that in-between space right now, between who you were told to be and who you truly are, I want you to know this. You're not broken. You're becoming, and the world will try to punish you for that. But your job isn't to fit in, it's to wake up. And waking up will cost you things. Comfort, familiarity, sometimes even love. But what you get in return is freedom, wholeness, peace, and a truth that no one can take from you. Once you stop pretending, the world doesn't just ignore it. It reacts. You'll notice how quickly some people pull away, as if your authenticity were a threat. And in many ways, it is. Not because you're harming them, but because your presence disturbs the illusion they've built their lives around. Most people don't want the truth. They want peace, even if that peace is built on lies. So when you walk into a room no longer playing by the rules, no longer laughing at the jokes you hate, no longer agreeing to things that drain your soul, you disrupt the entire system. And systems hate disruption. Carl Jung understood that real transformation doesn't begin with group approval. It begins in the shadow. In that lonely, quiet place where you face yourself and say, "I won't lie to belong anymore." This shift doesn't make you superior. It makes you clear. And clarity, in a world addicted to confusion, is deeply unsettling. You'll start to notice strange patterns. People who once praised you now avoid you. Relationships that seemed solid suddenly feel hollow. You may even ask yourself, did I change too much? But no, you didn't change too much. You just stopped abandoning yourself. You stopped editing your soul for the comfort of others. And here's the paradox. The moment you choose yourself, you'll begin to lose the version of your life that wasn't really yours to begin with. Friendships may fall apart. Career paths may collapse. Family dynamics may shake. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've stopped pretending everything was right. This is the earthquake before the rebuild, the shedding before the bloom, the death of the false before the birth of the real. Jung called it the confrontation with the shadow, a necessary step on the journey to individuation. You cannot become whole by remaining comfortable. You cannot awaken without letting something die. And yes, it's terrifying. You may grieve the life you had, the roles you played, the people you loved. But as painful as this process is, it's also sacred. Because for the first time, you are living in alignment. No more smiling to be liked. No more silence to keep the peace. No more performing to feel safe. You begin to attract different people, those who see you, not just your mask. Conversations shift, connections deepen. You feel less stimulation, but more nourishment, less noise, more resonance. And slowly, you begin to trust yourself. You begin to realize that the pain you felt all those years wasn't because you were wrong, but because you were real in a world that didn't know how to hold that. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's what you're doing. You're dragging the unconscious into the light. And not everyone will thank you for it, but some will. And those are your people. The ones who don't need you to dim down, who don't flinch at your intensity, who hold space for your complexity without trying to fix you. You will not find them until you stop pretending. But once you do, everything begins to bloom. There's a strange silence that follows when you stop pretending. Not the peaceful kind. At least, not at first. It's the silence of losing noise you didn't realize you had grown addicted to. Validation, approval, distraction. The sound of everyone else's expectations bouncing around your head like a storm. Suddenly gone. And what's left? You. Just you. For the first time in years, maybe decades, your own voice echoes through your mind. And it's unfamiliar. Because when you've spent a lifetime performing for others, you forget what you actually want, what you feel, what you need. Carl Jung called this disorientation the return to the self, the collapse of the false persona you built to survive. And when it falls, it takes your old sense of identity with it. At first, you may feel hollow, like someone who woke up in a stranger's house, surrounded by the furniture of a life you don't recognize. But this emptiness is not a sign of loss. It's a clearing, a sacred space where the real you begins to grow. And growth doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with discomfort. You may suddenly feel emotions you used to suppress: anger, sadness, grief, even rage. They rise to the surface not to destroy you, but to be seen, to be integrated. This is the work of shadow. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, you are making it conscious. You begin to see the moments when you abandoned yourself, when you said yes while screaming no, when you smiled through pain, when you dimmed your fire just to keep others warm. And it hurts. Not just because of what happened, but because you let it happen. But here's the alchemy. The moment you feel that grief fully, without judgment, without numbing, you reclaim power. Because you're no longer a passive participant in your life. You're awake. That's why healing is often misinterpreted as breaking down. You cry more. You need more solitude. You lose interest in things that once kept you busy. It's not regression, it's reconfiguration. You are shedding the survival mechanisms you no longer need. And just like a snake outgrowing its skin, it itches, it stretches, it cracks. But it doesn't mean something is wrong. It means something real is emerging. You begin to develop a new relationship with yourself, one that isn't based on performance, perfection, or pleasing. You start asking different questions. What makes me feel alive? What drains me? What boundaries am I finally willing to hold? This is where you stop being polite with your soul. You stop negotiating with the parts of you that keep you small. And in that space, the real voice, the quiet, steady one you buried beneath years of noise, starts to speak. It doesn't yell. It doesn't demand. It simply says, "This is me." And for once, that's enough. You'll still wobble. You'll still doubt. You'll still be tempted to put the mask back on when the room gets uncomfortable. But every time you choose truth over approval, you grow stronger. And that strength is not loud. It's not aggressive. It's not pride. It's presence. The kind that fills a room without saying a word. The kind that makes people pause. Not because you're performing, but because you're finally not. And slowly, your nervous system begins to recalibrate. Where there was once urgency, there is now patience. Where there was anxiety, now awareness. You don't react to life, you respond to it. Because you've stopped performing and started participating. Not from the edges, not from a mask, but from your center. This is where healing happens. Not all at once, not with applause, but in the small, quiet decisions to stay honest, to stay present, to stay real. And in doing so, you begin to rebuild a life that actually fits your soul, not your performance. That's the real reward. When you stop pretending, it doesn't just change your inner world. It shifts everything around you. People will feel it before you say a word, because truth has a frequency. And once you begin living in alignment, others can't help but react to it. Some will be inspired, others will feel threatened. Not because you've hurt them, but because your clarity highlights their confusion. You become a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see what you reflect. You'll notice it in small ways at first. Conversations that used to drain you suddenly feel unbearable. Environments that once felt normal now feel heavy. People you used to chase fade. But it's not rejection, it's resonance. You're vibrating at a new level now. And as painful as it can be, you'll realize, not everyone is meant to come with you. Some people loved the version of you that stayed small, that smiled on command, that never challenged the status quo. But the moment you started listening to your own soul, you became unpredictable. Not in a chaotic way, but in a sovereign one. You're no longer available for manipulation, for guilt trips, for shallow approval. You don't need to yell. You don't need to explain. Your silence becomes your boundary. Your presence becomes your protection. As Carl Jung once noted, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And you, by facing yours, remind them of what they're avoiding. That's why some people distance themselves. That's why others try to pull you back. Not because they truly care, but because your evolution makes them uncomfortable in their stillness. But don't shrink. Don't apologize for your healing. The people who are meant for your next chapter will meet you there, not out of obligation, but alignment. They won't need you to hide your truth to feel safe. They'll celebrate your wholeness. And when you find those people, those rare ones who don't flinch at your truth, you'll understand something profound. You were never too much. You were just in the wrong room. Now you're building your own. And it's quiet at first. It might feel lonely, but it's clean, it's honest, it's sacred, because it's yours. The conversations deepen, the connections feel effortless, the relationships grow from soul, not survival. You're not rescuing people anymore. You're not begging to be seen. You're not shrinking for anyone's comfort. You're showing up, fully, unapologetically. And that presence, that unapologetic truth, becomes a light. Not the blinding kind, the steady one, the lighthouse. You begin attracting, not chasing. And what you attract now is different. Peace, purpose. People who recognize your soul before your resume. You start moving differently, speaking with intention, saying no without guilt, saying yes without fear. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, becoming whole. Not perfect, not polished, whole. Shadow and light integrated. Wounds and wisdom held in the same body. You don't erase your past, you reclaim it. You don't fix yourself, you find yourself. And the world around you begins to reflect that change. Not always instantly, not always kindly, but inevitably. Because truth is magnetic, and once you embody it, the universe begins to respond. Not to your mask, but to your essence. People from your past may try to re-enter. Some will come with curiosity, others with control. You'll know the difference, because you're no longer operating from emptiness. You're operating from fullness, from self-respect, from clarity. And here's the final truth. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone, including your past self. The only validation you need is the peace you feel when you look in the mirror. That's how you know you're home. So let them wonder how you did it. Let them question what changed. You don't owe anyone your process. Your presence is the proof. And that's the beauty of this transformation. You didn't just survive. You remembered who you are.